Well, there she is.
Here I am. So how are
And
you?
here we are for Walking in Spirit of Truth here on this Tuesday evening, the third day of the week. As the sun is going down, we're entering into the fourth day of the week.
Can you tell me anything else that's special about this day?
Today is our son's birthday.
That's right.
It's
And
his
he is,
birthday, and
and
he's
we don't get
getting
to talk to him or anything because he's on the road, but it is our son's birthday and it will actually be the actual moment at 8:17. Just FYI.
at 8. Hey, we are
In just a few minutes
15 minutes away,
from the official time.
and then he will be officially how old?
Old enough.
Old, old enough.
If I
That's
say how old he is, that dates you and I. So although we say our age all the time, so it doesn't matter. But yes, our son's birthday. I so wish I could give him a hug and make him dinner and all of
Well, you know what, isn't it? Boy, it's been a long time since we've been able to give him a hug
yes, it has been.
since COVID started. So it's been a long time.
It's been a long time.
I can't wait though because he's in process to come home. The
And you know what? There's going to be a supernatural miracle of deliverance, and he's going to be home anytime that room is cleared out, ready to go. He's on his way. I don't know how, I don't know when, but I know Yah does. So I just trust in him. And that's sort of what we're talking about tonight anyway, is us not worrying about it because he's going to take care of it. So
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, welcome everybody to Walking in Spirit and Truth. I'm John Craig. That's Sandy Craig. We are in two different places. We are married, but we are not together.
okay, that sounds really bad too. You
We're
said we're not married, but
location-wise because I'm still at my office and she's at the house,
okay.
and I
But
will
you
be
know, do
going
you
to the
understand
house.
how that sounded? We're married, but we're not together.
No, it
That
sounded
sounded
weird.
really bad.
It sounded really weird, but I will be traveling to the house after I get
After
a
work.
report. After I get a report done after the show. So there we
Uh,
go. And that's all I have to say about that
well, there's
before I
more to do than
insert
that. I'm just going to remind you. So,
my foot in my mouth any further.
all right. Well, we are going to continue talking about Psalm 23, verse 4, but we're going to begin the evening by reading the whole Psalm of 20, the whole 23rd Psalm.
The
So, if you
whole
guys
thing.
will pull your scripture out and let's read it together, or you may have memorized it by now. Hopefully, you have, and you can just say it by memory. But let's pull it out together and let's read it.
Okay,
And there's power in the spoken word. So read it out loud where you're at. You don't have to listen to John's voice. Read it out loud for yourself.
all right. So that's a good point. And I was just going to say this. It's the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Okay.
So help me, y'all.
All right.
I mean, it's true, right? We're reading the truth of the word. But this is a great psalm. So I know y'all have been joining with us, and we've been digging into this. It's been really good study, and we really desire that y'all be blessed by it this evening as we break this out. As Sandy's breaking this out for us, I'm just color commentary. So here we go. This is Psalm 23, beginning with verse 1, a psalm of David. Yahweh is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou dost prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and loving kindness will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of Yahweh forever.
All right. I will dwell in the house of Yahweh forever. Well, we are backing up a little bit and talking about I will fear no evil. We're continuing that, and hopefully we'll get close to the end of that phrase, close today. But let's look at the acronym that many have heard in the church and elsewhere, FEAR. What have you heard about it in general? False evidence appearing real. Well, we need to understand that the only real thing, the most real thing there is that which we may not be able to see with our eyes, and that is Yeshua. That is his word. Those are his promises. They are more real than the things that are sitting around you presently. Yes, everything else is just a shadow. So anything that pushes away from his word, anything that pushes us away from his truth, from his unfailing character, is really false evidence. It's not real itself. It may look real, it may feel real, but it's not. David, he knows that Yah is unfailing in his love and in his promises and in his word. And he rests in that. He's not going to be moved by what's around him. He's not going to be moved by what's said about him, what's said of him, what's said of the circumstances. No, that's not going to happen. That word, Yare, Y-A-R-E, is really a strong word. And here in this context, it's meaning that Hebrew word for fear, that deep distress and concern over unfavorable circumstances. The circumstances are unfavorable. So what is that fear? Yeah, they're unfavorable circumstances that can create that attitude, that emotion. And there's nothing small about it either. There is an emotional impact when there is fear. We've talked about that. And we have this tendency to always project on what might happen, what might occur. And David knows that doesn't matter. What might happen, what might occur doesn't matter, because it's all entirely in Yah's hands. That's who we trust in. That is who we rest in. He's only going to be concerned about the important things of his word, attending to his word. The rest he's going to leave up to Yahweh. He's not going to worry. He's not going to stress. He says, Father, it's in your hands. So guess what does he have to fear? Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. He has nothing to fear because he trusts in Yah. You know, that Hebrew word ra'ah, which we're going to look at in a little bit, even more closely. You think about evil. What's the opposite when we have this tendency to use the word evil? Well, it's good. So what is evil? Well, it seems to be the opposite of good. And it's that very thing that we so desperately want to make sure that we do not cross paths with evil, that we don't cross paths maybe even with ourselves and our own character at times, right? So I want you to think about this as a task. I want you to make a list of everything that you can imagine of the what ifs. Make a list and then close your eyes and print them in front of your face. Can you see them? Do they have any reality other than what's been written on paper? Those are all in an area that we are blind to. In fact, when we open our eyes and put them in front of our face, it seems that they're so big. And when you move them away, they're not near as big as what the enemy would try to make you think. So what are you afraid of? Stop projecting into the what ifs. Stop thinking about the what ifs. Just trust in him. Fear wants you to literally stamp out the light that's within you. But when we are walking in fear, we are truly not walking in faith. Faith is what kind of obedience? It's blind obedience. And it's walking through those dark times, even if it's pitch black. When you physically can't see, you have someone who's still leading the way because you trust in him. When Joshua and the people of Israel prepared for battle against the enemy nations in the promised land, God said what? Yahweh said what? Deuteronomy 31:6. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them. For Yahweh, your Elohim, goes with you. He will never leave you, nor will he forsake you. Isaiah, what did he say? Don't be afraid, for I am with you. Don't be discouraged, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my victorious right hand, or righteous right hand. Isaiah 41:10. And then in Hebrews 13:5, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. Well, that's pretty strong. If Yahweh says he has never left you, the only person that ever walks away is you. But if he is always with you at your side, what do you have to fear? Fearing evil and trusting Yahweh do not mix at all. They don't go hand. You can't have one and the other coexisting. It's one or the other. And so when we're confident in the goodness of Yahweh, we can say, Yahweh is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? Yahweh is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? That's Psalm 27:1. If we believe that Yahweh is on our side, what else do we say? Psalms 118:6, the Yahweh is for me, so I will have no fear. What can mere people do to me? See, we need to take these words and you need to put them on a list and you need to speak them out and build your faith and proclaim those words. And when you're facing trials and testings or worry tries to come upon you, you grab those lists or that list of Yah's words and you read them, pray them, speak them, declare them out loud, because it will shift the atmosphere around you and shift your heart even. So when we're in our darkest and most trying times, Yahweh is always near us and with us, never leaving us, never forsaking us. He is our shepherd and we are under his constant care, because if he doesn't leave us, that means constant care. Every part of our lives, his goodness and his love will not fail us. We might fail, but he will never fail. Okay, think about that for a minute. He will never fail. We might. Now we're going to go to the Hebrew finally. And when we look at this phrase, I shall not fear, lo-eera, L-O-E-E-R-A-R-A. So we have the Lamed and the Aleph together. The Lamed and the Aleph. Okay, that Lamed is that picture of that shepherd's staff, and it means to goad, it means to teach, it means to control, to have authority, or even the voice of the authority. Okay, let's look at the Aleph then, because we know that that Aleph is strength and power and leader and teacher. That's also symbolic or can mean the strong man. Okay, start thinking about what I'm saying here. It can mean that strong man. Okay, if that's the case, and you put those things together, it could represent the husband, it could represent the strong man in the house, and it can also represent Messiah. But let's look at that Lamed and that Aleph just in those two things, because we're talking about I shall not fear. And of course, Lo is no or not in Hebrew, but Lamed, control or authority, Aleph, the strong man of the house. So control and authority of the strong man of the house. Or who or what is the strong man controlling? The control and authority belongs to the strong man of the house. Who's the strong man? Think about it. Who is the strong man in your house? Who is the strong man in our house? And I'm not just talking about a physical house, although that can be very evident as well, but I'm talking about in the house, in that walking tabernacle that exists within you. Lamed and Aleph, control of authority with the strong man of the house. Now, let's continue with that Hebrew meaning and let's see if we can uncover some more, because the rest of it, lo-eera, has that Aleph, Yod, Resh, Aleph. That's the next part of the phrase. So we've already gone over the Aleph. That can mean the strong man, the master, the husband. It can mean strength and power and leader and teacher. But then we have this Yod, and we've been talking about Yod as being work or deed. And so we'll continue with that vein. But then we have the Resh, which is head, okay, or beginning, or highest, or top. It can also mean the insufficiency of man. So let's put that together. Ira. We have the strong man work or hand or deed of the strong man, or the power of the work of the master of the strong man. Well, it sounds like here there's something maybe that's controlling us that can be the strong man in our lives. But that would mean it's occurring within us. Well, could that be true? Could that strong man be within us? Could it be us ourselves? Could it be fear that's surrounding us? Could it be something that we've allowed in? What did Yeshua say? He said, but no one can enter the strong man's house and plunder his property unless he first ties or binds up the strong man, and then he will plunder his house. So, how do you take control of the power of the strong man, or the work of the strong man, or the deeds of the strong man, so that those things no longer are a threat in your life or have control of your life? And who is that strong man? Well, initially, the whole world likes to say, well, that strong man, that's just Hasatan. Hasatan, he's the one that's doing all this. He's the one that did this. He's the one that's the threat. And I'm not saying that's not true, because that is, he says in the word, he comes to steal, he comes to kill, and he comes to destroy. But oftentimes, those very things that we give Hasatan credit for actually came from us. Yeah. And all he has to do is start us down this path. And without the word and without walking in righteousness, without walking on his path, that stuff takes off a life of its own in our own destruction. Did you want to say something?
I did, and it relates because it relates to the Ra and the Ra'ah, and I know you're going to get into it a little bit
Yeah,
later,
not quite yet though.
but just the noun is adversity. So you can, so it relates to um, our adversity, or which would mean the one who is fighting against us, and so we do have
Which
a
would be the
connection.
adversary.
Adversary. And so I was just thinking about that, and I actually was thinking about the same verses that you were talking about in terms of the strong man over there, and that Yeshua was talking about, and I think this verse is really showing us something positional, in
Positional.
terms of, because when he says I will fear no evil, the issue is that there is adversity out there. There is one who is an adversary to us, but it is positional, in terms of, we recognize that, are we a slave to that adversity, to that fear, or what position are we going to take with that? And it reminds me, as you were talking about earlier, and I was thinking about Joshua, you're talking about, being strong and courageous over there in Deuteronomy. And Joshua, I think he was given the command about 5 different times, in between Deuteronomy and Joshua. And then he gives the command in Joshua 10 to his people, be strong and courageous. And I just thought it was very interesting. Joshua 1:6, be strong and courageous, for you shall give the people possession of the land which I swore to the fathers to give them. So there's no room. There's no room for fear there. There's and it says, only be strong and very courageous. Be careful to do according to the Torah, which Moses, my servant, commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, so that you may have success wherever you go. So there's a connection there, as success over the one who had tried to bring fear. This book of the Torah shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, then you will have success. And it finishes up here. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not tremble or be dismayed, for Yahweh your Elohim is with you wherever you go. Or you can actually say, for Yahweh your El is with you wherever you go.
Yeah.
And I mean, I just, this is what was happening to Joshua. Was he facing the valley? Was he facing the shadow of death? Was he facing, what was he seeing? Was he seeing an adversary, or did he recognize, in this little coaching going on from Yahweh, is saying, remember who you are. Positionally, I've given your word. Don't depart from it. You'll have success.
And remember who I am, because if you're walking under my authority and my path, not only am I leading the way, but I'm completely covering you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
whom do you fear? But let's go back to the strong man, because are we the one that causes the problems when we take hold of fear and we let it grip our hearts, our lives, and our minds? Because we've already spoken about the side effects of fear, how we can no longer even see or think clearly using logic or anything else for that matter when there's fear. So in all actuality, if we fear, and we fear enough that we even allow the spirit of fear in, with either or both, what we are afraid of actually binds us. So we can be the strong man, or the fear that we've allowed in, the fear that we've brought in, the fear that we've let come and camp out in our hearts and in our minds is what actually binds us. See, when David was walking through this valley, and we've talked about it being the actual valley, but we've also talked about it being our own pride and us trying to stray from the path, because the path is surrounded by darkness all around us. All around the path that we're supposed to walk through is darkness. So we have to trust in him with every step. And that's what David says. If every step of the way, I'm going to trust in you. I'm not going to look at anything else. I'm going to trust in you. So when we're walking through the valley, we're not afraid. We put that strong man, that fear or that pride, that ego that's going to try to pull us from the path and cause us to divert in another direction, or cause us to think and act differently. We've got to bind that spirit. We've got to bind those emotions from coming forth. Our own will and desire to control our own destiny will bring forth fear, but it will also bring forth destruction, because we put ourselves under control instead of under his control.
Hey, that's a really key word right there, is because this is a choice. It
It is
has
a
to
choice.
do with our will. Our we tend to be led emotionally, make our decisions emotionally, but it's a choice, just like what Yahweh was speaking to Joshua about. You know, he is saying, you choose to be strong and courageous, and be careful to follow the Torah, and then you'll have success. You choose this right path. You choose to be courageous. In fact, over isn't in Revelations that it talks about the ones who lack courage do not enter into the kingdom.
Says a lot, doesn't it?
Uh-huh. Yeah. So we have this thing. Would Joshua have entered into the kingdom without being strong and courageous?
No, because the fear would have controlled him, and thus as the leader, it would have controlled the people, because that thing is contagious. That becomes the strong man, even though we're the ones that it's within. It is us even.
Yeah.
And and it becomes the spirit. It becomes that very thing which keeps us from the path that he's called us the path. It leads us down a different path. And that's the whole point of this psalm, is that we are to fear no evil because we trust in him in all circumstances. We literally have to rest in him. And remember, rest is our goal, and rest is Yeshua.
So over in Revelation 21, verse 7 and 8, it says, he who overcomes shall inherit these things, and I will be his God, and he will be my son. But for the cowardly and unbelieving and abominable and murderers and immoral persons and sorcerers and idolaters and liars, their part will be in the lake the lake that burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. That's pretty sobering. On the other side of it is that, but for the cowardly, it's the number one on the list. So I'm thinking of the opposite of standing up against our adversary causes us to be cowardly. And I think
And
about,
bow down to the adversary's ways and submit to them.
and yeah, right. Because what was the connection with Joshua? The connection with Joshua: be strong and courageous, and uh, be careful to do according to the Torah. And so, what would be the characteristic of one who's a coward? one that says, I might follow Torah when it's convenient, uh, but when it's not convenient, in other words, I don't believe that it's particularly going to give me the success that I want. So I'm going to try to weasel out of it in my own way. I'm going
Right.
to try to work through it in my own strength. I'm going to try to disappear, or try to hide in the shadows, or try to pray that I'm overlooked, or whatever it might be. I mean, these are things that people do as opposed to being strong and courageous.
Right. So in reality then, isn't it very important that we identify the things that we're afraid of that could bind us, that can move us away from his path, that would cause us not to be courageous, that would cause us to walk on a different path? Because it's not necessarily Hasatan and all his minions. I'm not saying that doesn't play a part at times, but we do understand he's out to steal, kill, and destroy. But all he has to do sometimes is put a thought in motion, and we take hold of it and just go with it and
Mm.
destroy ourselves through fear, through self-sabotage. We've all done it. I'm
Well,
not good enough. I'm not lovable enough. I have a fear of not being accepted. What if I'm not successful? All of those things can bind us and cause us to act differently than we would if we were walking courageously, uprightly, following his word and trusting in him. So instead of fearing, we should be saying, I don't need to be afraid because I am walking on this path, Yah's path, towards Yah, towards him.
do you remember back in the 80s when there were like multiple different publications that you could go down to the Christian bookstore and pick up, but uh, these were booklets or books of affirmations based on scripture. It was really a big deal back in the 80s. And I think it was a kind of a knee-jerk reaction to maybe a lot of now understand Christianity legalism, which kind of beat people down and made people feel bad about themselves. As opposed to having people walk in scriptural light and balanced in their life. But those affirmations that were all based on scripture, and I know a lot of people didn't like them because it's based on I can do all things who Messiah strengthens. And I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. All those different types of affirmations. And yet, do you realize by just simply speaking and declaring the word as we make it personal over us, those affirmations do build up our spirit, so
Right.
that and then it pushes down our soul man, who likes to be, likes to kind of drive the show through our own ways, our own will, our own um, you know our emotions.
Right. We always like to we always like to drive the show. We may try to let somebody else do it, but we oftentimes get in the way.
Yeah,
And which doesn't that make us the problem?
yeah.
Yeah. So let's get to what are we not to fear? Evil, Ra'ah, that Resh Ayin or Resh Ayin Ayin. So let's look at it. What is evil? What do we personify as evil? When I think of generally utter darkness and horrifying things and actions that are totally contrary to Yah's word, I call that evil. But does it have to be that graphic? Well, let's look. When we look at that resh again, we have that head, that person, that top, that beginning. We have that insufficiency of man that it can also refer to, and then the ayin. Now, just by the letter ayin, we know that that's the I. We know it's to know and experience. But It also represents our ability to see, our ability to perceive things and discern things and to understand, because the eye is the gateway to our mind. It represents a womb as well. Because how many times have you heard me say that thought, whatever it may be, we sit around and we chew on it and we think about it and we mull it around in our minds, and it becomes bigger. It grows just like a baby in the womb. And all of a sudden, our actions and our words are the very things that the snake eggs and spider webs that we've been dwelling upon, that fear in this case. So here we have Ra, the head or master of our understanding or perception or our ability to see. Oh my. It sort of indicates that what we're allowing to lead is what's going to define the perception that we have almost. Can we see this picture that's being painted here? Because it all also has to do with the house. There's something in there that has to do with that house, because it's all connected. Now, evil in itself, I've given this definition before, and there's several ways we can look at this multifaceted word, but the English word of wicked actually comes from what we conceive or perceive as evil. But the root of this picture is of a picture of breaking something into pieces in part. And the example that we can use is that resh ayin root, and it gives us this illustration that something is broken and can no longer fulfill its purpose. We become broken when we get off the path of righteousness and can no longer fulfill the purposes for which Yah's called us, because we're following our own path, or we're letting the strong man lead us in our mind, that fear, or our own pride and our own self-sufficiency, where we want to be on the throne. And so we become broken and we no longer fulfill our purposes. That's a root of evil, of what it means in Hebrew in part. So let's say that you have a lawnmower. The lawnmower is broken. It can no longer fulfill its purpose. Therefore, it can be considered, quote unquote, evil. Okay. That puts a whole nother look at this word. I'm not eliminating all the rest of it. I am not doing that. But in the language that we look at about brokenness, Job 34:24, he shall break in pieces mighty men without number and set others in their stead. Daniel 2:43, and the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things, and as iron breaketh all these, shall it break into pieces and bruise. Something's happening where we become broken because the strong man that maybe we let in, or maybe ourselves, is controlling us and leading us. Fear controls and leads us. So in reality, we have this person in this experience as part of Ra, in this picture, sort of in paleo as well. That root word, Ra, we always think about as evil, but when something's broken and it doesn't fulfill its purpose, it means it's dysfunctional. It's not functioning in the capacity or manner it was created to be. How often do we not function in the manner we're supposed to, or what we were created to do or be? We use the things that he's given us for other things, or we bury them deeply because of fear or the what ifs in life. In that case, evil isn't this outside force that's coming in and attacking me. Evil is actually within, because it's those very thoughts that we allow to ruminate in our minds and our hearts that are forming and developing and growing within us, inside of us, and begins to take us off his path. That's evil. We can't function the way we're supposed to function. That is what fear does. That's why the few weeks ago, when we went into even what the secular society knows that fear does, if they know it, why don't we? They understand that they can manipulate people. They can manipulate nations and cause them to go off the path they're supposed to be on by using fear. We insert ourselves into the path, demanding we go down a different path on purpose through other emotions, through something else. Not we're allowing to take over. What God says is good, and what Yah says is evil, but it doesn't matter. We stay on his path through it all. So what really constitutes evil? It's separating ourselves from Yahweh. If we do an act which is not according to his will, to his purposes, then we have gotten off the path of righteousness, then we've gotten off his path, and it is evil. We're not acting according to his will, to his word. So if we come along and we say, I know what Yah says is good, but is it good for me? Is it good for me? That question right there is sort of what happened all the way back in Genesis and Bereshit through Eve. Yah has set us prescribed path, and we're not to question it. We just follow and rest in him as we go even. But Hava, what did Hasatan say? English translations say, did God not say? Or did not God say? You can say it however you want to, but if you look at the Hebrew, it's Elohim Amah, God said. But then the serpent points this question, says in a way where we begin to question, hey, is that what he really said? And if we have our own agenda and purposes, we'll convince ourselves that the truth is something other than what it really is, because we have our own agendas. It brings forth doubt, brings forth question, and can even cause us to say, oh, yeah, that's not what that means. Can cause us to do something we wouldn't normally do. As soon as that happens, we introduce or the experience of the knowledge of good and evil when that happened with Hava, with Mrs. Adam. And we've got to remember that Yahweh is in control if we allow him to be. And that's the kicker right there, is that Hasatan can't just have free reign over us. He has to have Yah's permission, unless we are walking on his path already. Unless we are following his way, not following his word, sitting on the throne of our own hearts, or letting other things dictate how we live our lives, then we're not on his path, and he has we're basically free reign, fodder for him. But if we're following Yahweh, and if we're on the path of righteousness, if we're walking in truth, if we're trusting in him, then he can't touch us, because he has to go through Yahweh himself. Just as Job, he said, God said, hey, have you looked at my servant Job? He's not serving me because of what he can get. He serves me because he loves me. And then Hasatan got to attack, but not without Yah's permission. Now, I'm reiterating one more time that I'm saying that's the case if we're following his ways. If we are off the path already, following him already, following our own way, our own pride, our own emotions, then all sorts of things can happen, because we've already gotten off the path of righteousness that will cause us to fulfill the purposes for which we've been called. So what is evil? Yes, there's evil that we've talked about, that we can see, that we would attribute so many things to, but oftentimes evil is within us and causes us to deviate from what he's called us to do, from what he's called us to be, from who he's called us to be. Adam, Mr. and Mrs. Adam, they cover themselves with fig leaves. Figs is a Babylonian word for pride. How do we cover ourselves? What excuses do we make? When Yah said, hey, where are you? He wasn't saying, I don't know where you are, please tell me. He was saying, why aren't you by my side? Why are you walking on a different path? By my side is where you're supposed to be. Why are you not on the path I'm walking on? Where are you? Was this question. And what does Adam say? He doesn't say, I'm scared because he sinned. I'm afraid because I've sinned. I'm afraid because whatever. First off, he doesn't even think about his Mrs. Adam. He just includes himself. He says, I'm naked. I fear because I'm naked. Why would he fear? Because he's naked. Because that glory, that transparency that once existed around him and upon him and through him is no longer there. Now he's covered and it's shrouded. The intentions of his heart are no longer transparent. Now it's covered. Remember, fig, pride, Babylonian word. So he may look one way on the outside now, but be different on the inside. We may look one way on the outside, but be different on the inside because of pride, because of our own idea of what's right and wrong, because we want to run the show. And we let emotion and fear and other things take over instead of trusting in him. So what happens? We're on a different path. Evil, not fulfilling what he's called us to do. And that would be my encouragement for tonight. Let's take a big self-examination and make sure we're walking down his path, that we're not letting our own agendas lead us along the way and drive us, that we're not letting the emotions and the fear that the outside wants to put on us, we don't allow it to come in and take root, that we watch what we're thinking about and what we put our thoughts upon, because it should be his word. Speak forth his word, womb his word, not the words of man, not the words of fear, not the words of anything else, because I will fear no evil. I trust in him and I will let him lead me and guide me. Well, that's what I have for this evening. We're going to continue down this path and talk about the Yetzer Hara next week, because that's going to take a little discussion before we finish up verse 4. But I want to encourage you. I don't care where we've been. We can start fresh today. And Father, come before us and cause us to be willing, even if we weren't willing before. Let us be willing to be changed, to look like you and follow your way and your word. All right.
Amen. Great exhortation there tonight, Sandi. Thank you. Good word. Good word, if I say so myself. Well, we have the Craig Report. It's coming up here shortly as soon as we get moved from this show, and we'll go into that show. I've got some breaking news that you want to stick around for. So catch us over at lamnetwork.tv. You can also catch us over there on Twitch. So anyway, hope to see you on the other side. We'll talk to you soon. Shalom.